Walk us through your process a little bit when you're making beats. Like, where do you typically start? Is it drums? Is it a melody? Is it neither of those things? How do you know when you're done?
Yeah, I think for me, like, so I play a little guitar, I play like a little keys, but nothing like significant. Like the guitarist and piano players around me are all like so much better than I am, that it's like, that's not usually where I feel like I'm gonna shine. But I think like one of my strengths is sample chopping and
Mm,
rearranging and manipulating. So that's something I've been like tending to focus on recently. And I like worked out my own like weird little method of getting all my like strange chops. So yeah, a lot of times I'll start with samples. Or, sometimes like a drums if they're gonna be like unusual drums. I
mm,
guess like whatever is gonna be the more like interesting element, maybe try to start with that and then work things around that. So like if the
mm.
drums are like intentionally offbeat a little bit, maybe I'll start with that and then
Gotcha.
make things fit that.
So do you intentionally approach a beat kind of being like, this is going to be the most important element in this beat when you start? You're like, the most important part of this is going to be the drums or the sample.
Not really. I mean, when just for me personally, like when I'm starting something new, I usually don't have an idea. It's
Hmm.
just it's just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Whereas like when you're like when I would play in bands and stuff, like by the time we got to the studio, like those songs are all worked out. You
Sure.
know what I mean? Like we know exactly. But when I'm making beats, it's like, let me just and I like make beats when I'm just chilling,
Hmm.
so it's not like oh, I have this idea, I got to get down. It's just like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
sitting in front of, I've got like YouTube playing something, like I'll just pull up Ableton. Um, and like most of the time, I mean, I put out a lot of music, but that's like such a small percentage of like the stuff that I'm even bouncing out of Ableton, which is such a small percentage of the stuff that I'm even just hitting save and never opening
Right.
again. And then there's like a portion that I've just never hit save. It'll
Wow.
be like I
Yeah.
make something work on it, and I'm like, I don't even really like this, so I'll just like
Yeah.
delete it. So yeah, so I don't really have like a. You kind of never know what's gonna happen. I mean, you can have an intention. You'd be like, I'm gonna make a such and such type beat, or if I'm working on an album and I'm like, I'm missing a track that feels like such and such, you know.
Yeah.
And in terms of it being done, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's never like really clear when it's done. It's like a painting or
Yeah.
something. It's like, when is a painting done? So
Yeah.
you could mix something until for the rest of your life if you want.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But at some point you just got to put it out, you know,
Hmm.
maybe just giving yourself a deadline. Or what I like to do is like, I'm like constantly bouncing out stuff that I'm working on. And then I still use like iTunes playlists. I don't know if people do that, but it's like all my iTunes playlists are just like my own like works in progress.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so I'll listen to those bounces as like an album and be like, does this make sense? Does this flow right or whatever? And like, I like to listen to my works in progress, not in the session.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to see the parts. I don't want to see the automation. So like I'll bounce it, walk around, listen to it, or like sometimes I'll just play it and like turn my head away from my computer even
Yeah.
just to be like, just to try to, like we were talking about before, like try to access that part of your brain where you're just like a fan of music or a
Hmm.
listener and see if anything's sticking out, and then go back in and kind of tweak it. And I guess it's just a matter of like, if you can listen to it without something sticking out as like a thing to fix, then I
Yeah.
would say it's ready.
Your process is too interesting just in how you're like constantly making, like, you don't have, okay, this is my time in the studio and I'm going to go make beats right now. It sounds like you just kind of are always down to open up Ableton and see what happens. And I guess maybe that's part of it, but I'm curious because, especially when you include all the aliases that you have too, you release music at a pretty consistent and high rate. And so I think maybe giving a little bit of insight into how you get there, because I think there's a lot of people who have a ton of beats that are unfinished sitting on their computer,
Mm-hmm.
and in lieu of like opening it up and moving it to completion and putting it out on streaming or wherever they would want to put it out, they just kind of open a new blank project.
I know that some people are like that. I have a student right now who's an incredible producer. Like his beats
Hmm.
are so good. And he's always just like, yeah, I don't know if I want to put it out. And it's like, what are you doing? Like if I made that beat, that would be the next single,
Hmm.
but like some people just, I don't know, like they feel that way. But for me, it's like, let's just put it out, and
Yeah.
like, I actually, so I have like a ton of projects too. Like if anything, I don't have enough. It's just like the release times, so that's part
Hmm.
of why like the aliases are helpful, just to kind of, just to get it all out. But also too, like I started playing more guitar again. I kind of didn't really play guitar for like years, because it just like
Mm.
wasn't really what I was working on. And so recently I kind of got back into listening to more guitar based music and some like emo and metal and stuff like that. So I started playing guitar again, and I was like, well, let me record this idea, and ended up recording like 5 ideas. And so I was like,
Wow.
oh man, this is like a little EP of like kind of like a almost like Midwest emo, but not super intricate, just
Sure.
kind of like simplified. And then one of them was like kind of left. I was like, well, this feels too like almost like Death from Above, that kind of like rock. So I was like, well, this one
Okay.
doesn't make sense. So I made another playlist and I put it on there. And then I was like, well, maybe I could make more like that. And ended
Yeah.
up making like 5 more ideas for that. So it's like, so from just like making the rock stuff, now I have these 2 EPs that don't sound like each other. Like maybe those are 2 more aliases.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The stuff that I'm making is not very complicated. So I'm able to work like very quickly. So I don't know. I think like if you can figure out what's, not you, but for whoever is looking for advice, if you know like what's slowing you down, maybe it's bass lines or something,
Hmm.
then like work with a good bassist.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I know like I can play a little bass, I can put low end in a song. It's not that interesting, but
Hmm.
I could hit up Chris, who's
Hmm.
like, I mean, he's nasty at everything, but like
Yeah.
he's nasty, bass player, or like, and guitarist and piano player and all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. He's dope.
So like on my album I'm working on, like there's a bunch of like he's playing bass on some of it. This guy Andre, who's nasty, another multi instrumentalist, he's playing bass. Cartoons is playing bass. So it's like these guys are way better than I am. So why not like loop them in? If
Yeah.
that's like what's gonna keep the ball rolling, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Like if you know what's slowing you down. And so for the like rock stuff, I can't sing. So that's the bottleneck. Like I want to put
Yeah.
vocals on this. I can't
Gotcha.
sing. So it's like just trying to find somebody. Once you find that, then it's like, cool, put that out, do the next thing. You
That's
know what I
cool,
mean?
man.
I like
Yeah. I
to
mean,
move very quickly.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would like how you have like, I don't know, when a new kind of sound or idea comes up, it seems like you just make space for it. You just like, all right, I need a new iTunes playlist for this now. And you
Yeah.
don't. And I
Yeah,
think,
exactly.
right, instead of, which I think is, I don't think it's uncommon for people to kind of stumble upon a new sound and then sort of like mentally just like kind of smother it or ignore it because, like, well, it doesn't fit into this thing that I already had in mind. And so I think that
Right.
expansive, like, and making room for that that's a really cool kind of way to come at it. And I think a lot of us can benefit from that. And that's really, really cool, man. And also,
Yeah.
I think the sense of like having to do everything yourself. You don't have to do everything yourself. If there's, you expand the possibilities in your music. If you're like, oh well, maybe this is going to be more interesting if I have somebody else play bass on this or have somebody else play guitar on this and not have, I think because maybe we do live in this age of there are some like super producers and there's this sense of like you need to do everything yourself. And if you don't, that there's somehow, I don't know, like maybe it takes away from the credibility or quality of your music. And I
Right. Yeah.
definitely am with you on that. It's like, no, if you have something in your head and you can't get there on your own, it's the collaboration is amazing. Not to mention that you can learn to become a better player through collaborating and better producer as
Mhm.
well. So that's really, really cool, man.
I agree, and I should be like doing that, but it's just like if I know somebody's nasty, then it's like, well, I'll never like be at their level, so I just like keep like looping them back in. And you'll find like certain people that you just work really well with, or you work really quickly with.
Mm,
You know what I mean? And I think like just making your team strong. And if there's somebody who you worked with, but like maybe you didn't vibe with them, that's cool. Like you can still like,
sure.
you know what I mean? Like you can have like I have some collaborations where it's just slow,
Hmm.
and and that's okay. And so like that's not my main thing, because that would drive me crazy if like my main thing was slow.
Right.
Just because like I just happen to work very quickly, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I'm probably, you know, missing a lot of detail and all this stuff. But like for me, that's like I'm working quickly. So the
Yeah.
stuff that is slow, it'll just happen when it happens, you know, and I'm not
Right.
like cutting it off, and I don't want to not do it. I think that's another thing too, is like one of the reasons why I have so many projects is because there's a lot of collaboration. So like the vocalists that I work with, um, like they're dope vocalists, you know, they're people who are doing big things and are busy. So I'm kind of on their schedule a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if it takes them 6 months to send me a part back, in those 6 months, like think about how many new things started cooking up, you know? So
Yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
having a lot of projects at the same time, like lets you like not be so stressed at how long something's taking. I have like an album with all vocalists on it. I have a instrumental kind of beat tape. I have a instrumental Lake Sanford kind of chill EP, a collab EP with a friend of mine, and then like this rock stuff. So, you know, maybe 6 or 7 things in the works. So it's like whatever
Sure.
kind of gets done will be the next one that comes out. And if the others like are taking a long time, like they'll come out when they come out, you know?
Yeah, I like it. There's a bunch of trains on different tracks moving at different speeds, you know, but they're all going to get
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And
It
that's
just takes
cool.
the like stress off a little bit. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And that's part of how you have so much stuff coming out all the time, is that you have all these separate kind of trains running.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Right
And
on.
then I don't have to be this guy that's like, hey man, send me your parts, send me your parts. You
Yeah.
know, it's just you get to be a little more chill. I'm just like, ah, yeah, whenever you get time. Meanwhile, I'm like internally, I'm like, send
Where
me your
is that
parts. But
part? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But then you know, it keeps like keeps the vibe more chill, and you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Are any of these projects coming out soon or anything you want to talk about kind of in more detail?
I mean, I'm pretty excited about the next Jacuzzi album. Um, but I don't know like when or how it's gonna come out. Other than that, so I like change my mind so quickly. Like I'll be like, oh, such and such is the next thing. Here's how I'm gonna do it. And then a couple of days later, I'm like, no, that's not it. It's this other thing, you know. And
Yeah.
so that's you know, it's nice being kind of like solo and free to move it however you want. But at the same time, it's hard to like know if an idea is good or not. So I just kind of like run with something and then change my mind and run with that. So now the latest I'm thinking is take that beat tape I was talking about and maybe deconstructing it as just singles.
Oh, cool.
So just drop in those because you know, like I was talking about, like the pitching for Spotify editorial and all that. So it kind of like doesn't make sense to drop 10 songs and pitch one of them.
Yeah.
So just break them up into singles and then yeah, like every couple of weeks just drop that. And then if anything, like if you use the same distributor and the same ISRC codes, at the end you could put out an album that has all those songs and the stats still translate and there's the same distributors collecting for you. So if because I like to think in terms of projects, you know, I've got the iTunes playlist. So it's like I've
Sure.
been looking at this as an album for like
Sure.
6 months to a year. So it's like I want it to be an album. Whereas all the music marketing people will tell you like, don't drop albums, drop
Yeah.
singles. It's a singles market. So I think by dropping singles, let's say you drop 9 out of the 10, then what you could do is drop a 10-track album that has those 9 plus a new one, and then pitch that new one. So that this way, all 10 tracks have been pitched and it exists as an album. So I think it's like a new, like if somebody had done that back in, you know, the 90s, early 2000s, like that would have been so whack, you know, and like the day
Yeah.
the album comes out, you'd be
Yeah.
like, we heard all this already. This is not, you know, like when you
Yeah.
go to Sam Goody to buy the CD,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, why would I buy this? This is old.
Yeah.
But like that model is so gone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I don't, unless you're, you know, Beyonce, Drake, Taylor Swift, like people don't care about like the day your album comes out and like sales and, you know, what did it live up to blah, blah, blah. Like who cares? Like
Yeah.
if you're still on your way up, kind of getting people's attention, like, so I think that's where I'm at right now. I'll see if it changes by like
Yeah.
tomorrow, but I think I'm going to like do like all singles and then then drop the album of like previously released stuff, just so like if somebody finds out about it after that point, they can click on the one album and hear it as a project. But leading up to that point, like each one gets the attention that, you know, that it deserves, or give it its fair shot at landing on a playlist or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing all that too. Yeah, I mean, and I hope, again, anybody who's planning to put out music, I hope you go back and listen to this, because yeah, that's really cool stuff to think about in terms of strategy and just functional stuff. And
you know, it's here's one more nugget is this is what people do now, and I'm sure you've like seen this too, but like, so people, especially if you are a band or a producer and you don't have listed features, this becomes a lot easier. So if it's just one artist, so you drop the single, and then when you drop the second single, you know, like a month or however long later, track 2 is the first single. You know what I mean? And then when you drop the third single, it's that one. Track 2 is the second single. Track 3 is the first single. And so you just kind of keep re-releasing and re-releasing and re-releasing. And just like, because if you, it's all about clicks, right? Like I want to get somebody to click on my song. If they click on it on the third release, but they don't click away from it, it's going to play track 2 and track 1. And so you get more streams, right? I mean, you get like a 1 extra stream per song, but also it's another time somebody's heard that song, you know, and you were talking about like people kind of like what they're familiar with, or like repetition. So like if you just kind of keep getting them to hear that same song, it might kind of like, you know, earworm its way in. And then whenever you drop the album, as long as all your ISRC codes are the same, like that song already, you know, you drop an album that day, it has 10,000 plays because of the previous singles all count towards that album. So I think a lot of people have been doing that over the past like year or two, but I think that that's like a smart,
interesting
kind of.
I didn't realize you could have the same ISRC across all songs like that. Interesting.
No, across like the same. So it's like your song as the single, and then that song on your album.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah, very cool.
Because otherwise, like if they're different, then they're going to be 2 separate ones, and then your top 5 might have like 2 versions of the same song. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. Again, that's a great nugget for everybody in the producer world trying to put their music out. And I think the last couple of things I want to do is let's tell everybody where they can find you, where you'd like to be found, handles, platforms, etc. And then I want to get into some questions that are a little like really short answers, and don't think too hard about them, you know, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. I mean, I use Instagram. That's like pretty much it. I have a TikTok that I like don't really use, even though everybody says you have to use it. But yeah, at Jacuzzi Jefferson on Instagram. And if you want to shoot me an email, it's just jacuzzijefferson@gmail.com.
Oh, watch out for that inbox now, man.
Yeah, right? It's going to be like ways to get more Spotify streams. That's like what my inbox is. It's just all that. And it's like, man, what is this? This is... You know, it's one more thing, just because I thought about this. There was a minute, I don't know if people are doing this as much anymore, but they'll be like, you know, we'll get your song in such and such playlist. But let's say like you do that and you work with somebody who puts you on these like, you know, playlists with a lot of fluff, or let's say it's like Ed Sheeran, Ariana Grande, Jacuzzi Jefferson, you know, something like that, like top hits of whatever. It's like, if people listen to that playlist, they're going to skip your song. Like if you're looking for Ed Sheeran and Ariana Grande, like you're going to skip Jacuzzi Jefferson. They don't like that kind of stuff. So I think sometimes those services that are like, we'll get you on a such and such playlist, like can actually be a disservice. You know, you're teaching the algorithm that people skip you. So I would be cautious about that kind of thing. You know, when you get the emails.
That's a little gem. I think that's great, man, to remind people that like it's tempting, you know, and you love the idea of being out there, but you got to keep in mind sort of the medium, you know, and where all this exists and how it works. And so, yeah, man, again, appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, man,
I think the best thing you could do is just like if everybody in like the producer community makes their own playlists and puts their own, like if I make a playlist and I put you on it and me on it and Nothing New and Radicule and like Jazz Enough and just like all these like homies, you know, that like actually make sense together, and everybody else is also doing the same thing. I think then you can kind of like glue them together in a way that the algorithm realizes like, what's up,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all
Man.
about the algorithm.
Yeah, and it's a good way for like the community to help other people working on similar things, you know. So it's a nice way. It's kind of a cool way and a lightweight way to be able to collaborate and let people know you're supporting them. And I really like that as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Thanks for listening to this Producer Head Sample featuring Jacuzzi Jefferson. He shared some incredible insights on the importance of staying flexible, embracing collaboration, and pushing through creative blocks. I hope you found something here to take with you into your own creative process. I know that I did. Be sure to check out the full conversation with Jacuzzi Jefferson. It is episode 1. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave a rating and review wherever you're listening. This helps ProducerHead find its place and its people. And without you, there is no ProducerHead. Thanks again for listening to this episode of ProducerHead. Don't forget to head over to torubeat.substack.com and subscribe so you never miss an episode, along with some great extras like episode transcripts and access to the bi-weekly podium, a curation of my 3 favorite discoveries from on and offline over the past week. It's a 2-minute read providing you with a personal soundtrack, ideas, and inspiration that you can use immediately. I promise you do not want to miss this. Become a member of the community of producers receiving personally curated music, ideas, and inspiration to develop their craft. Subscribe at torubeat.substack.com. That is torubeat.substack.com. torubeat.substack.com. This episode was co-produced, engineered, and edited by Matthew Diaz. From ProducerHead, this is Toru, and in a way, so are you. Peace.